How many film submissions did you watch total from your running NFFTY?
I think I probably watched nearly 10,000 films, probably. I mean, a lot. We were getting thousands of submissions. In the first few years, I was watching every single one of them. Eventually, we got more people involved to do, especially pre-screening, and kind of start, I don't want to say eliminating, but kind of eliminating films. But we were always very fair. We had multiple people watch every film, so it wasn't just like one person deciding on it. But yeah, I watched a ton of films while doing the festival, and I think it definitely had an impact on me because, for one, I saw a lot of really bad films, of course, and so I saw what not to do and not how to learn from that. And then I saw every once in a while saw some incredible movies that were just like, I was mind blown. I was like, how did someone my age make this? And so it was probably, again, this like amazing, almost film school like experience, but in an even more probably modern way of just watching all these films from all over the world of all different kinds, raw and super professional, and kind of getting, on one hand, analyzing them as a viewer and being like, would people like this and should this be in the festival? But also as a filmmaker being like, wow, look what they did, or look what they did and how we should not do that. And so it probably, I'm sure, contributed a lot in terms of expanding my filmmaking, knowledge and abilities after watching so many films for so many years.
So then what do you think makes a bad movie? What were some of the things where you could almost tell within the first maybe 30 seconds?
I think it was just, it was not telling an authentic story, someone trying to copy something that they had seen already, like make an action spoof on some movie they liked, or doing something, probably the mistakes we all do, which is like trying to copy something and not having any sort of original kind of idea with it. And I think too, just sometimes trying to do maybe too much, because we had plenty of films that were very simple, made with no money, and sometimes those were some of the best films. But then you had someone who was maybe trying to do something too ambitious for what the resources they had. Maybe there was always issues with acting, of course, performances, because you're probably limited on who you can get. There was technical challenges, but I honestly don't think the technical ability of a film is always really the best judge of it. I mean, you could have a really raw film that doesn't have the most amazing cinematography or whatever, but if it has a really great story, it can be super successful. So I think it was always just trying to find those stories that were captivating, and whether that was a documentary or a short film or whatever, but yeah, it was just kind of trying to find those just really captivating stories.
From your time with NFFTY, what did you see with the submissions that you found really made a film satisfying, any genre?
I think what makes a film satisfying is when it makes you feel something. And, whatever that is, whether it's a sad feeling, a happy feeling, being scared, whatever, I think that was when I knew we had a good film, was when I was, after watching hundreds, if not thousands of films, you kind of get a little numb sometimes, but then you turn one on while screening them for the festival and it would just captivate you and grab your attention and make you feel something. And if it can make you feel something after watching tons of other films and kind of being bored and over that, then it's probably going to captivate everyone else. And so that's kind of what I was always looking for, was what are those just really compelling films that would make me feel something, whatever that was. And I think that's the same with anything now, and that's what I try to think about when I make a film too, is just, how can I make people feel something? And I think for me, that was always kind of trying to tap into emotion, because that's just kind of what I always went to. For some people, it might be comedy or something else, but I think if you can do that, you can make a great film.
What about a non-NFFTY submission? What was one that made you feel something, however old you were?
As a kid, my parents actually would either take me to a lot of movies, or we had a video store near our house, and so we would rent a lot of films. And it was like an independent video store, so we would sometimes find movies that wouldn't be a blockbuster or something like that. And so I actually probably had a pretty good movie experience as a kid, watching probably a lot of movies that were more older than I really was, like not necessarily kid movies, but I remember being pretty young and watching To Kill a Mockingbird. And I remember at first my mom had rented it, and she said, you have to watch this. And we did. but it was like, it was in black and white. And for the first few minutes, I was like, this is going to be boring. Like, what is this? Like, I was very young at the time. But then within probably the first 5 minutes, I was totally hooked because it is such a captivating story, right? It has great characters. It also, there was these young kids in the movie, which I was probably the same age as them on the screen. And so I think that hooked me. And so I think it's the same idea where if a movie can grab you and grab at your emotions or captivate you in some way, it's going to have you. And then obviously from there, you still have to have the rest of the film be compelling, good acting, good storytelling otherwise. But I think that's just so important, is just to have something that's going to grab people and pull you in.
Any success stories with NFFTY that really stand out, like whether it was a film that just drew you in, or maybe a filmmaker that you were so compelled by their story, their real story?
Definitely. I mean, I think I saw so many amazing films over the many years I was running the festival. One in particular was this young female filmmaker from Afghanistan, and she had pulled off making this film, and it was a documentary kind of about her life. And this was in, I don't know, late 2010s, I guess. I don't know. Obviously, this was like wars were going on all over in that area, and it was just so profound, I guess, to kind of see this story from someone your own age from around the world. And then she actually came out to the festival, and we got to meet her, which was incredible. And there was so many other interesting stories like that. I mean, there was, I think especially the documentaries at our festival were so compelling just because they were so personal and real and raw. And so, we had amazing short narrative films also all the time, but the documentaries were just so special because they were coming from basically someone your own age telling usually some really profound, amazing story from their life. And so those were always just so compelling and captivating. And we were able to find films from really all over the world and all walks of life. And it was just always exciting, really, every time we would get a submission in and see kind of what this story was. And, a lot of our filmmakers have gone on to do big things. A couple of them made feature films. We had a short documentary in the festival several years back that won the Oscar for Best Short Documentary that year. So it's been kind of this great, I guess, you could just call it like a farm team or whatever, I guess, for finding these filmmakers and helping them develop themselves. But of course, not every filmmaker goes on and has a big success story. I mean, most of the filmmakers, if you touched with them now, like, they probably won't even be still directing, like, the reality is it's just obviously very hard, and not everyone that makes a film when they're in their early 20s ends up becoming a director, but a lot of them are working in the industry somewhere, or they're just doing something else in their life that is creative, and they're using their skills probably as a filmmaker to kind of still tell stories in some way, whether it's marketing or whatever. And so I think that's the big thing, is that no matter what happens, I think a lot of anyone who can kind of put together a film and kind of go down that path, it's just such a great experience for kind of learning about yourself, but also about how to kind of like tell a story and captivate people. And I just think it's a great skill in life that you can use one way or the other.
Did you see where filmmakers who were overseas did you realize, I guess, what privilege we have here in terms of being able to make something, withstanding certain laws, whereas in other countries probably much, much different, much more fear?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there was definitely films at times. We had a few of our filmmakers, especially from the Middle East, who would get into our festival, but then they wouldn't even be able to travel necessarily to the U.S. to attend the festival. Sometimes that was because of their own country. Other times it was because the U.S. wouldn't let them in. And it was definitely a time period too. Again, it was like, the internet was starting to take off more. I mean, this was like, Facebook and social media was existing, but it still was like the world wasn't as close and connected as it is now. And it was always so captivating when we would get to meet these young filmmakers from around the world and hear firsthand from them just their experiences of their everyday life, because it was And that was what was so special about the festival is you would literally have everyone from a very privileged, probably wealthy family to someone who was dirt poor, and we had to basically raise money to bring them out to the festival. And we did that in some cases, and so, but we all were the same in the end of the day because we were all filmmakers just trying to tell stories. And it was such a special thing to kind of see everyone from all walks of life interacting and getting to kind of share and learn from each other, and I think, more than anything, I think most young people will understand this because just in general, they're more exposed to people probably from around the world. But I think you kind of it just makes you realize how similar everyone is, and how most of the conflicts and problems would probably be solved if we were all just like hanging out with each other a lot more. But
Making movies.
Yeah, exactly.